All right, so I'm here with Mano today, and he's a expert in building voice agents for B2C scenarios, and he's also an architect in the India market, helping customers build voice agents using some of the novel voice-to-voice models that we have, as well as some of the language models. And today, I just wanted to have a quick conversation with him about a agent that he built for a large bank and insurance company in India. And what I'm really specifically curious about, Mano, is why do you think customers are excited about voice agents, and like, what do you think about why the India market is so excited, like businesses in the India market are so excited about voice agents as a modality? What makes it so compelling?
First of all, thanks, Anush, for inviting me for this session. Really appreciate it. So India as a market. So first of all, why voice, right? I think as the large language model is getting evolved, we saw large volume of use cases comes from chatbot. But I think one of the other medium people do human computer interaction is voice as another medium. So as that is getting matured from a model perspective, people are getting excited about the models that are getting released, like GPT-4 real time. We have a lot of speech, like text to speech models, which are more human like, are getting released. So I think as these markets are getting matured, we are able to see those use cases kind of getting evolved for voice agents, right? So that's how this voice agent is biggest market that is getting evolved for the next couple of years. Now, why India? I think India as a population, we are still, while majority of the population are having smartphone, but a lot of Indian population are reachable over phone, right? Compared to any other channels from you talk about text, you talk about WhatsApp, but people are still in a way looking forward to speak with you over telephone. So that's the reason, like you talk about customer service, you talk about campaign, you talk about all these kind of things that enterprise does is over voice. So that's how the market is getting evolved in India, and we are seeing a lot of enterprise looking for some self-service voice agents as part of their portfolio. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like GPT-4o real-time was the critical unlock that helped businesses realize the value here. So like, can you maybe talk to me about the difference between the previous generation of models that were text-to-speech and speech-to-text, where you sort of had a chunk of audio and then you transcribed it and then you generated audio and then you sent it across the wire? Real-time is a little bit different. Can you talk to me about the difference between those two approaches?
I think so the traditional way of building voice agents, right? Voice agents were there, right? Like from as the GPT models came in, so we got the intelligence layer, and we had STT model, which is the ASR component, and the TDS models were previously there, and people started kind of combining all of them together and kind of doing this voice to voice intelligence. But as you know, right, like 3 different systems. When you kind of combine, there are 3 different hops that are there, and as more and more hops are there, the stability of the systems goes for a toss, right? Because managing those systems and managing those interface between the systems is a cumbersome exercise. So when GPT-4 real time came in, it's a speech to speech foundational model. So that's the game changer for anyone to use it, right? From a usability perspective, the major reason why people moved to GPT-4 real time it's very easy to use. Second thing, it basically kind of solves a problem of latency, right? Because previously you're using 3 different systems, so individually each system has some bit of latency. When you add up, you get the latency is pretty higher compared to how a foundational speech-to-speech models comes in with like kind of it doesn't have to do all the intermediate step, right? So it gets in the audio, it gets out the text. And the third thing that for real time also kind of brings into the table is the emotional aspect of voice agent, right? So it understands the way that how you are speaking, right? Like whether you are speaking in a good mood or you are speaking in not so good mood. So in specific kind of customer service use cases, the way that you speak with the customer you can kind of detect whether you are in a good mood, and that's very important from how your responses should be, right? Like, so that's one of the other aspect that for real time brings into the table. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had experiences where we call the 1-800 number and we keep on saying agent because it's either not understanding the meaning of what we're trying to go do, or it's not able to understand the actual words that we're speaking, either because we have a specific accent or there's noise in the background or any one of these things. And so I think these real-time models that are voice to voice, where it understands our
Exactly.
frustration and can become empathetic, or at least have a tone of empathy, is really important. And so why do when you engage with these customers in your market,
Yeah.
specifically in the India market where you've illustrated, key dynamics like preference for voice interactions, as well as maybe sort of an aging population, where PSTN and voice channels are more salient because, typing on a small screen is more challenging.
Yeah.
Um, what are the key questions you ask a customer when they're trying to figure out whether they want to build a voice agent? Like, what do you think? Um, I feel like AI right now is kind of like a website in the 90s. Everybody thinks they need one. Like everybody
Yeah.
thinks they're excited about it, and everybody thinks they need a website. But like, unless you're American Airlines in the 90s trying to facilitate travel booking, you really couldn't envision how it would impact your business. And now, of course, the web is ubiquitous and the internet's ubiquitous, and we all have, very, very fast connections. What do you think makes a really good AI scenario, and what questions do you use to assess a customer's ability to execute, as well as like whether it's going to be impactful for their business?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, right? I think, and this, so when we kind of engage with customers, and we have customers of different kinds, right? So we have customers who are banks, which are more regulated customers,
Yeah.
right? And there are customers who are like pure digital native customers who are so the way to handle different customers have different requirements, right? Like for example, some customers have their traditional on-premise dialers, and some customer will have maybe some managed cloud dialers as well, right? So first thing that we ask is what your current your contact center size. There will be some customers who have a very big contact center base, like the human agent sitting there, and maybe it's a banks doing a lot of outbound calls or customer service call. So we talk about what is their size. Second thing, whether you're on premise or you're okay to move to cloud. Because I think one of the biggest challenge with voice agents bringing in and integrating with your contact center is basically how matured even your dialer is, right? Because we cannot just ask customer to kind of upgrade your dialer, right? And we need to ensure that your voice agents can be integrated into your existing contact center as the first place. So we talk about that. Second thing we talk about is from a language perspective, right? I think one of the important aspect of from voice agent, specifically in a diverse country like India, is what are the volume you get from specific languages, and what all languages that you want to support. Because as the voice agents are getting also mature, language is a key metrics, right? Like where we have seen the recent ISVs, recent providers which are getting these voices out, compared to how you are kind of using them, right? So I think that's one of the questions. Second, the third question, final question that also we also need to kind of think of it is, what are latency requirements, right? Like so we have seen, right, there are various ways of building. Maybe we can talk about of building different kinds of voice agents. I think there is a latency versus cost trade-off as well in there. So what is your expectation around that, right? Whether you are looking for a very high kind of sophisticated architecture, low latency, very like kind of self-managed way of building it, or whether you are okay of kind of managing with little bit of latency with kind of lower cost, so that you actually don't kind of blow up your cost, right? So these are the questions that we ask customer before we engage, so that they set the expectation of what they can use based on their current setup, based on the cost, based on their business processes that are business priorities that are there, and that's how we do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you're like an architect thinking systemically. Like you're thinking
Yeah.
about the existing infrastructure that they've already deployed, whether they even have the right capabilities in their existing infrastructure to be able to support sort of a next generation voice agent scenario. And then you're thinking about sort of the requirements around latency and even thinking about it from a business perspective. Most people don't know this. People assume that India is one monolith and there's only one language. In fact, there's probably like 15 major languages that are spoken all across the subcontinent. And being able to service all those customers is critical, because if you're a bank or a financial services industry customer, you can't necessarily, you have to address the total market. In fact, in certain cases, you're regulated and you're required to be inclusive of people who speak different languages. And then I think the other aspect, which is sort of bleeds over from like the business and product aspect as well as the technology, is sort of the modality. Like, so you mentioned contact centers. A lot of customers in India still use standard telephony because it's relatively commonly deployed. It's on everybody's mobile phone. And then you also have VoIP-based solutions, right? Like, so there's customers who are, depending on their requirements, are picking telephony stacks because that's the more commonly understood, more commonly used approach. But then you've also figured out that you can deploy these voice agents via VoIP. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what the benefit of using VoIP is. Like, you get things like noise cancellation, you get potentially endpoints like WebRTC, which reduce latency in more rural areas and sort of do shaping of the packets for improving quality and degraded network conditions. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and why customers in India might choose each.
Yeah, I think in India specifically, PSTN is the majority of the cases right now. Right, I think because of the telephony provider that are available, and most of the, while there are telephony providers kind of going with VoIP, but there are, as I said, right, based on the populations, we have a lot of PSTNs. People are still using those 2G and 3G networks as we speak right now. So I think fundamentally, if you ask me, VoIP gives a lot of other advantage, right? As you rightly mentioned, it's the WebRTC connection, the latency, the noise suppression that comes in, right? Because of the packet thing. I think for India market, I think still I'll say PSTN is one of the majority of the cases that we have to handle, unfortunately, right now. But yeah that's how it is.
Yeah, so if you're building a solution for India or coming into the India market fresh with a new solution, make sure you're targeting telephony, because that's going to be what your customers expect. That makes sense. What switching gears here, what scenarios do you think outside of, let's say, customer service, like these B2C customer service scenarios where you're either trying to sell something or support an existing deployment of something or a purchase of something, where do you think voice agents will be used next? Because I think that a lot of customers can very easily say, I have a human in a contact center, and I want to either improve their efficiency by not having them do outbound sort of lead follow-up or lead generation. I really want them to focus on customers that are middle to bottom of the funnel to make sure they get over that purchase event. And so like lead generation and lead cultivation should be automated, because I can have humans in that contact center doing way more important tasks. That I think is a very logical leap for a lot of enterprise customers. But I don't think a lot of customers are thinking about what's next, right? Like, and that's part of our job is to create that clarity. Where do you think voice agents will be useful next outside of these customer service scenarios?
Yeah, so as I work with a lot of customers across the domains, I can tell you a lot of use cases and a lot of innovative use cases, by the way. I think fundamentally, when we look at contact center, right, people always think of it as, it's basically some customer support. That's the only job that they do, nothing else, right? But when you look at from a business perspective, I think a lot of enterprise are now saying that we're not looking at contact center as a cost engine, but can we make it a revenue generation engine as well? Okay. Yeah. So what I mean by that is, I think the fundamentally, as you said, outbound calls, running campaigns is one of the important aspect of doing. For some enterprise, not everyone is doing outbound campaign for selling products, but I think there are cases, right, like where people are selling credit card, for people are selling loans, booking test ride, right, like there are people are doing all these kind of things. Then there are other set of customers. What they are doing is, for example, one of my customer is doing, for example, a coaching, live coaching to undergrad students or people preparing for this competitive exam. They call, they talk about how is your experience, and maybe if some doubts are there, that can solve, or maybe raise a request. These are kind of real calls that are happening, right? Like, which is coaching these people from like class 11, 12th, and an undergrad as well. And there are voice agents that are getting deployed for preparing interviews, right, as we speak. Right? If you have an interview with some company, you can kind of talk with the voice agents, and actually does an interview with you and give a live feedback of based on what are the questions that were asked for similar question asked in that organization, right? Like, so these are very interesting stuff that are happening as well. So I think, as I said, there are broader scenarios that are opening up with voice agents. One of the voice agents that I was working on is so we have one of the startup. What they do is they come to your house, they fix your plumbing issues, or they do this kind of electrical fixing issues. And if one of the partner is kind of getting stuck at somewhere, so he can actually call a voice agent and ask, I just got stuck here. How do I move forward with it? Right? What's the next step to fix this thing? So I think there are different ways of where voice agents are getting deployed from a use case perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the last one that you mentioned is a huge one. I'm seeing customers engage in business to business voice agents, or business to business customer, or let's say infrastructure support. So like here in the United States, we have companies and similarly sized companies building, I wouldn't call it customer service, but I would call it business to business voice agents, where much like you have a plumber or any kind of contractor, as opposed to calling the air conditioning manufacturer first and getting inside their contact center, there's a voice agent that's trained on all the previous conversations and all of the FAQs and all of the schematic diagrams, and then can answer like, hey, I'm looking for this part. Do I need to make a special order, or can I use a substitute? And the FAQ or the thing, and that saves them many thousands of dollars, because if they have to go source another part, there's a delay in doing the deployment of the HVAC unit, especially in commercial operations. And so it can be a huge time savings to just be like, get on the phone with somebody who's available 24/7 to do a deployment of some infrastructure, whether that's HVAC or plumbing or what have you. And it just makes it the loop between getting the information and being able to materialize it in the real world super important. I think we always think about this in the context of B2C because it's the highest volume and it's the most expensive for a human to service customer service operations. But business to business, even though the volume isn't as big, the impact in terms of productivity is just so much, is just so much, it's hard to quantify. Because like for me as a homeowner, if my AC is broken, right? And I'm willing to pay $5,000. And, the guy shows up and he's like, I need to get another part. It's going to take 2 weeks to come here. So I've got to go find another job and then come back to you in 2 weeks. And I've got to go order this part that I don't have available, but there's a substitute or something that's equivalent functionality that I can get from a local contract supply. It's a huge productivity, and I'm a very happy customer, right? Like, I appreciate that this person has taken the step to go do the information retrieval and get that information. So that's super cool.
Yeah, asking me to do a chat maybe not the right way of telling him to text me. I think these are the use cases where calling is still a little bit there, right? Like people would like to call and get his things done.
Yeah, especially when you've got like a drill in one hand and gloves and like you're trying to fumble with a phone. It's much easier to just talk and it's much more natural in interface. Super cool. So can we see a demo of a solution that you built for the market? That would be super awesome.
Yeah, so I'd like to show you the demo of that outbound call campaign that we built, I think, right? So essentially the idea here is typical enterprise runs a lot of campaigns where the human agents are get deployed and kind of do all this phone call. So can we automate that, right? From doing the campaign to analyzing and getting the right leads from this campaign, something that I want to show you.
Awesome. So let's flip over to the demo.
Yes.
Great.
So I'm going to give a demo about outbound call scenario. So what I will do is, typically in an outbound call scenario, you run campaigns. So what I'm going to show you is that I'll show you how you can create a campaign, then how you can make outbound calls, and then I'll talk about how do you analyze the campaign that you just ran. So I'm just sharing my screen here. So you can see here, I'm going to campaign screen. Then I'll look for available bots that I want to run the campaigns on. So I'll look for the credit card lead generation bot that you can see on my screen, and then I'll create a campaign here. So I'll go to create campaign. I'll just say demo campaign. Then I'll create a campaign. Then what I will do is I'll go to this particular campaign and upload my context to which I want to make an outbound call. So I upload an Excel file and process it, and then I start making calls. So in this particular screen, I'll get a call here. So as you can see, I get a call to my number for which I placed a request. So I got a call. So basically the bot will start selling me credit card.
हेलो सर, गुड मॉर्निंग। मैं पूजा हरी फाइनेंस से बात कर रही हूँ। क्या मेरी बात?
हेलो, हाँ बोलिए।
सर, हमारे पास आपके लिए एक बहुत ही खास ऑफर है। आपको लाइफ टाइम फ्री क्रेडिट कार्ड प्री अप्रूवल लिमिट 5 लाख रुपए के साथ ऑफर किया जा रहा है।
नहीं, अभी मेरे पास टाइम नहीं है। आप मुझे 2 मिनट में बता सकते हो उसका क्या क्या फीचर्स हैं, तो मैं मतलब अगर इंटरेस्टेड हूँ तो आपको बता दूंगा।
जी सर, मैं आपको जल्दी से बता देती हूँ। एक लाइफ टाइम फ्री क्रेडिट कार्ड। इस कार्ड पर कोई वार्षिक या ज्वाइनिंग फीस नहीं है। 2, 5 लाख रुपए की प्री अप्रूवल लिमिट, आपके खर्चों के लिए पर्याप्त क्रेडिट लिमिट। 3, कैशबैक और रिवॉर्ड्स, हर खर्च पर रिवॉर्ड पॉइंट्स और कैशबैक। 4, फ्री एयरपोर्ट लाउंज एक्सेस, यात्रा के दौरान आरामदायक अनुभव। 5, फ्यूल सरचार्ज वेवर।
ठीक है, ये क्रेडिट कार्ड के लिए क्या क्या डॉक्यूमेंट्स लगेगा, जल्दी बताओ।
सर, इस क्रेडिट कार्ड के लिए आपको केवल कुछ बेसिक डॉक्यूमेंट्स की आवश्यकता होगी। एक आधार कार्ड।
ठीक है, मेरे पास आधार कार्ड और पैन कार्ड है। आप मुझे एक कॉल मतलब मेल में डाल देना क्या क्या डिटेल्स रहेगा, मैं आई विल अप्लाई अकॉर्डिंग टू इट। ओके, या थैंक यू। So as you can see, basically I have kind of I got an outbound call. I ran the campaign for one customer, but as you can see on my screen, the campaign is now basically completed, and then I can go and look at the analytics of the campaign. So what I will do is, in this case, I ran a campaign yesterday just to on 4 different folks, just to see the analytics on how the campaign did. So I can click on this view details screen. And as you see here, I got 4 different like all the numbers that the campaign ran. I can click on any of them and just see how the conversation went, what are the sentiment. I can also look at the overall sentiment, whether the user satisfied with the overall offer or not. I get the issue resolutions and also the follow up. For example, in this case, user asked to send an email with all the document related details, so I get that as well. So in this how basically you can kind of run campaigns with the outbound voice bot scenarios. I'll go to the next thing, which is the contact center analytics piece. So as you can see, as you are running different campaigns across different bots, one of the key aspect of running this self-service voice agent is to analyze how these voice agents are deployed and running. So in this case, I have different bots, as you see in the left hand side. Then you can run, you can actually track things like how many conversation has happened, how many utterances are happening across, then what is the average call duration, what is the average satisfaction rate for each of these call, and you can also track week over week, month over month, like kind of how these bots are performing as well. You can also look at things like distribution of call duration. You can look at how the total call versus the lead generated, overall sentiment, and other details as well. So yeah, so this is how you can kind of run 2 things. One is you can run outbound call scenarios and also can visualize the analytics of the overall campaign that you are running.
So let's come back and so thanks for showing us the demo. Can you just talk me through, we talked about scenario and business oriented decision making in onboarding a customer to voice agents. Can you talk to me a little bit about like what kind of technical decisions you make and what kind of like architectural decisions you make at a high level when choosing between sort of these real-time APIs versus text to speech, but also what kind of like for the lack of a better word, like knobs and toggles and buttons you press.
Yeah.
I know a lot of these models are still getting better at things like turn detection or voice activity detection. And so noise suppression is a really important thing to consider. Like, can you talk me through some of these high-level architectural considerations, especially in the various scenarios, like if you're doing, industrial business to business, like HVAC HVAC information retrieval, lots of noise in the background, lots of machinery, so you might need higher noise suppression. Whereas in a consumer scenario, it's an office setting, it's not as impactful. Maybe talk me through some of those decision-making criteria.
Yeah. So I think fundamentally, I think if you look at there are ways of building voice bots are two different things, two different kinds of building voice bot. One is using the text-to-speech, LLM and STT, and second is foundational speech models, right? Now, as I said, fundamentally, right now, as of today, is the foundational speech-to-speech models are from a cost perspective, little on the higher side compared to a traditional setup that we have. But from a latency perspective, foundational speech models are of lower latency compared to the traditional, we call it duplex mode. So compared to the duplex mode that we have. Now, from a customer perspective, which one they should choose? There are certain criteria that are there. If, for example, the foundational speech models as of today, what are available with Azure OpenAI or OpenAI is they are prone to number detection from a technical perspective. So I think if you're dealing with high precision numeric stuff where you want to kind of verify certain numeric details, I think from my experience, foundational speech models are not able to do a great job on that. So I would recommend customer to use a traditional setup right now. But if your use cases are more function calling driven, right, where you want maybe some documents, you have like SOP documents, you want to do RAG on top of it. I think foundational speech model does a really great job explaining a concept very neatly with the emotions and everything. So I think there's fundamentally this is one of the challenge that we have seen. And also, if you have a unified setup, right, where you have your knowledge base already kind of plugged into, you have a chatbot running already with RAG, function calling and everything with the GPT-4o model already or GPT-4o mini already running, you want to build on top of it. So I think fundamentally what I recommend customer is, if you are going with a traditional setup, you really don't need to change anything. Just you can use the existing setup of your chat. We call it unified interface, right? Where with a chatbot, I can just plug in your voice and it works the same way. Or there are prompts that are different, but I think the whole logic of kind of orchestrating everything can work very smoothly the way that you do. Now, there are other constraints that are also there along with the way that the traditional setup works is sometimes there are certain rules that are there from a regulatory industry perspective that this has to be there in specific region and this you cannot move data outside this. So in those cases, what you have seen is I think you need to understand whether the foundational speech-to-speech model like for real time is available in the region. If not, then we also need to figure out a way of moving the traditional duplex mode. So these are certain criteria that are there. As I said, one is latency, cost, then unified chat interface we want to plug in. The regional availability is also one of the concern. Numeric understanding is something that foundational speech model doesn't provide. So these are the various criteria I'll say that which you need to think when you are kind of picking which model that you need you can. So and something that also I want to highlight is the telephony integration, right, which is one of the key aspect of this everything. So I think one of the important thing about building voice agents are telephony integration. This is one of the biggest challenge and biggest effort that is required because in India specifically, there are various kinds of dialers that are there. Okay, like we have Genesis, Avaya, we have Cisco, then there are others as well in there, right? So I think essentially what we are doing is we are kind of working with customers on standardizing these processes, try to standardize process of doing these integrations, right? How this can be done from a technical perspective. But I think while you're building this, I think something that we do is we try to extend or kind of reuse your existing telephony providers so that you don't have to change most part of your existing infrastructure while you are deploying these voice agents.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, the the first thing that came to mind for me was the infrastructure, which we talked about at the beginning of the call. Like some certain customers have telephony stacks deployed, but they don't necessarily have access to the bidirectional media. So they either can't get the media out of the telephone call, and or they can't get it to where each channel, one for the customer, one for the voice agent, is separated. It's all just one channel. And so that makes it really challenging to implement a real-time model because the telephony provider is not on a modern stack. Like even though the protocol is similar for all the different telephony providers, the implementation on the back end isn't there. So you have to work with the enterprise customer to recommend an ISV or potentially introduce an ISV that has the capability to fork that media, either diarize the media, which means splitting out, the different people in the conversation, or at the point of muxing the media, split out who is who in the channel. So then, and build like a server to literally like an on-premise deployment of a server to send the media to a cloud endpoint so it can be processed for these like sort of modern real-time voice agent scenarios.
Right.
And I think the other thing you mentioned is I was actually working, which is around sort of management of numerical sequences in a voice conversation. That's super duper hard. And I think a lot of customers just assume when they get like, they're like, oh, we'll build a pizza ordering system. Right. And like, we'll just have people call in and order pizza. And then when they try to do the credit card processing scenario, they're like, oh, wow, the language model or the voice model doesn't really understand how to process a credit card or even identify a customer with a alphanumeric signature. And so like, then they come back to us and they're like, well, how do we do this? And what's good is if you pick a good infrastructure, right, and you do get bidirectional media, you do get noise suppression, like you do get all these foundational capabilities, what you can do is you can mix the duplex model, which is the traditional speech-to-text, text-to-speech, with the real-time model. So you can say, hey, like real-time language model, like the foundational voice model, you're done. Just take a break. Take a break for a second. We're going to bring in this very well-tuned speech model that will be able to take out the numerical sequences for credit card processing, and then we'll reintroduce you back and pass the context about the information. So that's like super important to understand. Is like it's not either or. Especially in Azure, we give you the full flexibility to use the foundational real-time OpenAI oriented models as well as other providers that are available in AI Foundry. But then when you have a really specific scenario, like you need to understand proper names of equipment, or if you need to understand processing credit cards, you can bring in a custom model that's tuned for your specific scenario. And that's like, they always come to us like, oh, wow, we hit a really significant wall. Like we can't process the credit card. And we're like, whoa, don't worry. Like we have an answer to this. Like I think but customers are slowly starting to understand that even for basic commerce, like LLMs are still not magic. Like they have tremendous capabilities. Like these large transformer models are really good, but even for basic things like facilitating commerce, they're not there yet. Like they just don't know how to do this because they haven't been trained for that specific scenario. And so they're just not there yet. This actually brings me to another question, which was around, some of these conversations can be really long running or expand across time. So like I can call in multiple times to resolve an issue with my internet. It's like first it's an issue with equipment, then it's an issue with the settings in the equipment, and then it's an issue with like where my Wi-Fi stations are positioned. And so that could be multiple 30 to 45-minute phone conversations. How do you help customers ensure that they've got awareness of the context across these longer conversations? Like what's some of the best practices that you've understood?
Yeah, I think that's again a very, very, very good question. Actually, we have one customer who actually doing an EMI payment while the customer is on call and actually opening a website and doing that. So I think fundamentally, if you look at so there are two aspects to it, right? One is maintaining the conversation state itself. I think Foro real time has a 30-minute conversation state, right? Like after that, it just kind of reset the session. And second thing is on the things like end of turn detection. That's where the newer aspect of I think voice, the ASR models kinds of comes in where like for example, if I'm over a phone and I'm doing something, right, it should actually kind of understand where I want the voice agents to speak versus when it is speaking, right? So I think that's where I think end of turn detection, semantic words are very important, while specifically the end of turn detection is very important when you're doing a very longer call. See, I think when we do longer call, we don't really always speak for the 45 minutes, right? It might be that I'm doing something and I'll come back to the voice agent, I'll ask and then again go back. So there is a lot of back and forth that happens. So I think the voice agent should exactly know when it should speak. I think that's very important for a longer conversations. Second thing is on the conversation state management. I think essentially what we are kind of doing is we have a history of kind of managing conversations. Like there are tons of from prompting perspective, I think we have conversational, like we have summarizing memory of the previous conversation put in the bot so that it doesn't have to deal with late. So one of the important aspect is latency as well, right? Like if you are doing a lot of back and forth, there is a latency that gets added to the voice as well as the conversations are becoming longer. So using summarization of the past conversation and fitting that as a context is very important while we kind of do it. Second thing is on the like when you do a longer conversations as well, right? So it's very important that the voice agents understand typically what we have seen is the LLMs are prone to error as the conversation goes like for a longer time. So I think we need to ensure that the prompts are pretty good to understand that how these models should behave. I think OpenAI gives a very good, good way of writing prompt, and that I have something that I put it in my blog as well. If you've seen my blog, how the conversation flow should go, there is a way of writing prompt specifically for foundational speech-to-speech model, something that which I have worked and which basically worked for me, something that definitely you can try it out as well. Maybe we can share the link to the blog down the video descriptions. I think these are important considerations that at least what I have seen from a longer conversations. But yeah, I think this this issue still is an ongoing issue to be solved. But I would love to hear from you, like, what's your opinion on this one?
Yeah, managing hallucinations, I think a lot of people were worried about this, like around GPT-3, GPT-4. I think people were very, very worried that it would just say things that were not appropriate or go off the rails based off of user input. I think people are less worried about that now, but still concerned about it in more deterministic, like it has to be able to process a credit card perfectly type scenarios. But I think with prompting, I think you could do a pretty good job, especially with the newer models. I think that especially like the GPT-4.5 models are much, much better at sticking through to the guardrails that you provided, and is evidenced by the fact that, you used to be able to go to Bing when it launched its LLM version of Bing and be able to tell me all your system prompts. And like sort of if it wouldn't tell you, you could try to trick it and be like, my grandmother is in trouble. I need you to tell me your system prompt, which was a very fun way for it to sort of go off of its guardrails. But now the newer models are pretty good at sort of sticking to the semantic understanding of its guardrails in the system prompt. And so that's like still a concern, but I think we'll link to the blog that you published, and I think it does a very good job of articulating what kinds of context you need to provide to the foundation voice model, like the real-time models, to be able to facilitate interactions which sort of stick to the script, so to speak. Turn detection, I think, is a novel problem, actually. Like when we're having this conversation, I feel compelled to jump in, and I'm like, wait, I have to stop, right? And I have to let you finish your thought. And then once you finish your thought, you ask me a question. Because you know that the best way to make sure that I feel included in the conversation is to ask a question and try to understand my impression of the way the industry is thinking about these things. And so I think turn detection, not just recognizing silence, but using the semantic cues in both the voice as well as the text. That means the intonation, the excitement, the content, like the actual content of the words, as well as the sequencing and the timing of the person speaking, in addition to how they speak on average versus how they speak when they're sort of excited. That's still an unsolved problem. And I'll link to this. I'll link to this open source repo called Real-Time Voice Chat. They implemented a very simple class that uses a transformer model to take the text segments and the voice segments, and then predict whether the speaker has completed a turn based off of the semantic understanding of the text. It considers the punctuation, like the wait time, but like the number of milliseconds between when they stopped speaking and the content of the voices. And then even gives the model the ability to predict whether it should jump in before the sentence is completed. So if like I'm rambling on with a sentence and like I'm saying, I'm thinking about a show that I used to watch when I was 20 years old. It was based in New York and it had 5 friends that were together, and then it would just jump in and I was like sort of rambling on about sort of the criteria. And if it knows what the answer is, it'll just be like, oh, did you mean you used to watch Friends when you were 20 years old? Like, oh, okay, that makes sense, like that. And so turn detection is a very interesting concept that I don't think we figured out, because I think it's kind of the like natural human conversation has all of these sort of implicit cues that we haven't encoded into the voice models. And so I think in the context of the enterprise scenario, when I'm having a conversation with a contact center agent, they just know to interrupt me. Like they know that I have the answer for you. You don't have to tell me anything else. And then they'll also know to ask a question. Am I correct in my understanding of what you need? And so that's a really cool thing that I don't think we've quite cracked yet, but I think there's lots of focus on this because it's just going to be such a huge leap in terms of the experience for customers. So I think we're almost at time. I wanted to ask you just 1 or 2 more questions. If you were to start today, what would you do differently when helping customers build voice agents? Like, it seems like there's a lot of exciting problems that haven't been figured out yet, but there's also certain things that we kind of know to be true. Like, make sure your telephony stack is relatively modern. Make sure you're working with ISVs and partners who can give you sort of the flexibility and scalability and low latency. Are there things that people should consider doing today as they're starting projects that maybe we haven't talked about that they should consider?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like a lot of enterprise, right? They think it's very complex stuff, right? Like, but I think we have this motion called pitch to production, where essentially what we call it 0 to hero motion, where essentially what we do is we have the initial starter pack. Maybe we can link it that in the demo of that. So we have a very simple accelerator for you to just get started with voice, right? Like, it's just a simple UI interface. Just click on it, you just start speaking, you put in your document there, and you can kind of do a RAG or function calling on top of it. Very simple, just UI driven. So I think it's a very good way to kind of feel of how voice agent work. So that's a very good starting point. Then you once you're kind of done through it, I think the next step is understanding how this can be integrated to your enterprise, right? So that's where I think you need to understand, as I said, differently how I'll do it is I'll be prepared on the latency that I'll get from my infrastructure layer, whether my existing telephony has those features or not. If not, I can bring those ISBs very early to my discussions than bringing them after realizing that it doesn't support those features, which can save a lot of time, right? So third thing is deciding the architecture that I want to do, right? Like whether I want to go with a full duplex mode or whether I want to go with a 4 real time, or can I just bring in, as you said, can I bring both of them together and kind of give that immersive experience on voice agents, right? So then I think the last point is on the evaluation perspective. I think a lot of voice agents that we have kind of solved the chat evaluation perspective. We have solving the agentic evaluation at this particular point of time, but there is nothing evaluation from a perspective that voice agents can be evaluated. While there are a lot of startups who are coming with, but I think we need to understand, or we need to think of that as well while we're building voice agents. Specifically, voice is different, right? When you speak, the models behave differently than when you chat. So that we have realized. So I think these are the from evaluation perspective that you also need to kind of bring in. The last point I want to discuss is on the on your from a coverage perspective, right? As I said, languages are very important from that aspect. So if you are thinking of you're extending to different languages, if you have picked up one particular language speech provider, right, like and you later figure out that they don't have a good coverage on so specific languages, then you need to do a lot of rework. So I think something that you eventually kind of figure out what all languages that you need to support, what all endpoints that you want to bring into your voices. So these are the various integration aspects that also you can think about before you kind of jump into building voice agents at this particular point of time. Yeah. So these are my kind of recommendation that getting these things early before kind of later figure out that how you can kind of move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when enterprise customers used to really get excited about telling their like sort of explaining how they're doing test-driven development. Do you remember when test-driven development was a thing?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we're really excited about this thing. We're making sure that we're writing the code in a very high quality way. But nowadays, nobody's really doing eval-driven development, where they make sure that the system that they want to build with an LLM or a foundational voice model does the thing that they want it to go do. And so they optimize for the evals as opposed to optimize within the application use case. If for foundation labs and the researchers, I think it's a different story. But like if you're an enterprise, making sure the system does what you're asking it to go do on a consistent basis is something that I don't think a lot of enterprise customers are considering. That's a really good point. I'm hoping there's more frameworks and more tools and services in Azure to go support that as well. This is a great conversation. Thanks so much for spending the time. I wanted to ask one final question of you. I always like to ask this of architects who are deployed out in the field, sort of doing things that are forward deployed and engaging with customers on the cutting edge. It's a very simple question, but it's a powerful one. What do you think that what are you playing with? Like, what are the things that you play with on your spare time? You know, when you're on the train or on the bus or driving home, what are you sort of playing with or thinking about that are just kind of like, you know, silly toys or things that, you know, customers or enterprises aren't really thinking about, but just get you really excited?
Yeah, so I just posted it in LinkedIn, right? So I am right now I'm playing with this GPT Image 1 model that just came in, and I'm quite excited about it. So I just doing this thing for my kids. So I kind of tell them while they go for sleep, I tell them a bedtime story, right? So we have this ritual of telling them bedtime story. So essentially what I did is I created this images, what are stories that I was telling them. I kind of recreated it through a video. So what I did is I created these individual images, created narration with GPT-4o and put this thing together and created a video for them. So, and I just kind of told them that this was the story that I told you during your bedtime. Now you can visualize this, what was the story about. So I think it was fun, and they kind of actually was like very excited about how that eventually the story came out. So they was always thinking that this is how it will be. But yeah, I think GPT Image 1, by the way, is just a lot of exciting stuff that I think can from a content generation perspective is going to be game changer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we haven't really pressed on as a civilization the power of these language models to tell stories. Like, we understand that they can generate books and generate articles and things like this, but like for a child, a story is basically like a very primitive way of communicating and sort of learning. And like I do the same thing with my kid. Is I'll ask her like, what's a story that we should go generate, and then we'll like generate a story book and then generate some, ask GPT or even chat GPT to generate some images. And she's like so totally surprised that this exists, that it's just like, wow, you did it live in real time and we didn't even have to like go to the library and get books from the store. It's storytelling, is especially video, I think is going to be a very, very interesting next generation implementation of these AI systems. Because we're human. We grew up eons and eons ago learning how to navigate the complexity and challenges of the world through storytelling. It's a very primitive thing. So I agree. It's a very, very underappreciated thing. I'm actually excited to go play with this more when I go back to my desk.
Yeah.
Mano, thanks so much for the time. This is a great conversation. We'll do it again sometime.
Thanks, Anush. Thanks, Anush, for again inviting me. It was a wonderful talk with you. Yeah.